everybody. It's Anthony Ray Bench here. We are doing I wouldn't say daily, more like bi-daily? Is that what we can say?
Every other day?
Yeah, every other day. I almost said Comic-Con. Sundance Film Festival wrap-up. We're going to be talking about the movies that we all saw with the Film Threat crew. Today we have Matt Passantino, and we have Bradley... Shit. Oh, my God.
No, it's actually Gibson.
Bradley shit. Nice to meet you.
That's awesome.
And we have Bradley Gibson. Wow. I'm fucking out of it. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Festival brain is a real thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it totally is. This high altitude is fucking me up.
And I'm practically asleep.
I came with a cold. Aren't you supposed to get one after Sundance?
Dude, if you get me sick,
I know.
I'm coming after you.
Like holding the microphone as far as possible so you can still hear me.
Well, then the audio fucks up, and Chris is going to get on my ass. So it's this is the Kobayashi Maru. There is no win. Anyways, so I saw 3 movies. How many did you guys see?
I saw 3 today.
4.
Okay. He's a rock star.
Matt is the fucking workhorse of Film Threat. Like he's the overachiever. Like he's the kid at like school that you get pissed off at because
we ask for more homework.
Yeah. Anyways, so what 4 films did you see, Matt?
I saw, based on Twitter reactions, I changed it up last minute for my first one. It's on Native Son. And that was, and of course, I don't have the director's name in front of me, but it was his first film. And it stars Ashton Sanders. And he was, if you saw Moonlight, he was Chiron in the middle chapter. And since then, that was 2016. Since then, I've only seen him in like The Equalizer 2. So this was a really good, strong role for him. So he plays he lives with his mother, played by Sanaa Lathan, and his siblings. His father passed away, and Rashid Johnson is the director. Yep. And, so he lives with his mother and his siblings, and he's got his girlfriend played by Kiki Lane, who just made her debut in, if you saw If Beale Street Could Talk. And, he has this group of friends and whatever, and his one friend is like, rob this store thing, but he doesn't want to be like a product of his environment kind of thing. So he gets set up with a job as a driver for this like affluent white family. Bill Camp is the father. He hires him, great character actor. And so he gets to know the family, and he becomes friends with the daughter of the family and her boyfriend played by Nick Robinson, who we just saw in Love, Simon. And it's this kind of whatever slice of life movie, and I was really into it because I thought it was a really great Ashton Sanders performance, and then it takes a turn that prompted 6 walkouts.
Holy shit!
So I don't want to spoil anything, but it just
I'm curious.
It just
we'll spoil the shit out of it when we turn off the recording.
I'll tell you guys,
yes.
like it's nothing. It's nothing like...
If you weren't covering the movie, would you have walked out?
No. I gotta be... Honestly, for me to walk out of a movie, I have to be bored, not appalled. I'm fine being appalled. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't quite appalled, but like it just seemed... It didn't seem fitting with the stories, the problem. So it just seemed like a shoehorn thing for dramatic effect.
I'm sure you saw Sorry to Bother You.
Yeah.
Right? Is it like a shift like that?
Nothing's a shift like that.
Okay.
But... it's just kind of just how it's handled, and
all right.
Yeah, I mean, I literally heard people like, "This is terrible," say "This is terrible," and leave. So that was interesting. So that didn't quite stick the landing for me. That one, I liked half of it, I would say.
Okay.
A strong first debut. It's got some of the first director kind of things. Like Look What I Can Do on Little Money, and that's great and whatever. But it just kind of feels very first filmmaker. The second movie I saw was called Troupe Zero, and that starred McKenna Grace. She's the young girl, if you saw Gifted, with Captain America. Chris Evans,
yeah.
Which was a totally sweet and charming movie, and she's really great in that. So she plays this girl who was very she's very intrigued with contacting like aliens and outer space. And her father's played by Jim Gaffigan. Her mother had passed away, but before the film had started.
I think I was assigned to this movie before Alan shifted the schedule.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I love Jim Gaffigan.
Yeah, I just kind of went because my first assigned movie wasn't until 3:30, and I was like, I got to see something.
Yeah.
So
and your extra credit.
So so basically she wants to become part of the birdies, so like the Girl Scouts of this movie, because they get a chance. There was something like space related if they like competed at this jamboree. So she puts together this misfit group of kids, and they need a den mother kind of thing. So Viola Davis, who plays the secretary at Jim Gaffigan's like one man law firm, is that. So always great seeing her, and it's just this like sweet but like very formulaic and quirky indie comedy. Kind of feel like you've seen it before. You've seen all the beats before, so you kind of just shrug and say, "Oh, that was cute." And didn't really like leave too much of an impression on you. My third movie was Honey Boy. Honey Boy was directed by Alma Harrell. She's a documentarian, and it was written by Shia Labeouf. And it's the story. Shia LaBeouf, it was announced however long ago that Shia LaBeouf was writing a movie about his relationship with his father, which like cue eye rolls. Like, who wants to see that? And it just seemed like another stunt of his. I really liked this movie. I really liked it. And
do you think it's going to get people to take Shia seriously?
I think it should.
Okay.
Because this is not a movie that I felt Shia LaBeouf. So Shia LaBeouf plays his father in the movie, and that's a little.
That's interesting.
A little stunt casting that kind of can go either way. I think he's fine, but Shia LaBeouf, it's an over the top guy. So he had a very, he's been acting since he was a young kid and played. So the character's name is Otis in the movie, and as a young performer, he's played by Noah Jupe from A Quiet Place, and who's very good. And they kind of have, his father's abusive physically and emotionally, but he always sticks by his father. He wants to, he loves his father. And so it's just kind of, and it cuts back and forth too, like when Otis is is a 20-something actor, and he's played by Lucas Hedges, and everyone's really great in this movie. So like, never did I feel like this movie was Shia LaBeouf reveling in a chance to put the spotlight on himself. It felt like it's something he felt like he had to do. Like
an honest story.
It's totally honest. It never feels like, look at me. It's an artist kind of working through, he wrote it when he was in rehab. So, kind of felt like in search of catharsis for himself. Really liked it, because I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the most self-indulgent movie I've ever seen. And it wasn't. Like, I really, really liked it. I was kind of surprised how much I liked it, because it just felt really honest. And it didn't feel like a movie he wanted to write, but felt like he needed to write.
I've always felt that like he has the talent to be a great actor and a great artist.
And I think he is in a lot of things. Jersey American Honey?
No.
So it's this kind of like 3-hour rambling movie.
You already lost me.
And he's like the leader of like a traveling door-to-door magazine sales group. And he's just
totally lost me.
I loved it. And so I think he's great in that. And I always loved Disturbia. Going back all the way to 2001, 7.
Yeah.
I like Disturbia.
I just think I think a lot of times child actors try too hard to break from that mold.
Yeah.
And I think he's definitely a victim of that. Just look at me. I'm serious.
Sure. For sure.
I'm not the kid in Even Stevens. I'm not, the kid in Holes.
I mean, he did that Lars von Trier movie where they like actually had sex in it.
Yeah.
And he's like, so I totally get that.
That's a guilty pleasure of mine.
Nymphomaniac?
Yeah. I think it's so fucking dumb and stupid.
I think it was I thought it was for a movie that was like all about like the big draw was like, look at these actors. I thought it was the most boring fucking movie I've ever seen.
Literally.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Interesting.
No, I
also hate Lars von Trier.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan either. Now that movie, like, it's such a fucking train wreck.
Oh yeah,
It really is.
all his movies are.
Like I think you're right. It is very boring, very long, and very self-indulgent. But there's just something about how ridiculous it is, and the dialogue.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I love it. I love it in a bad way.
Yeah.
Where it's like you want to see some shit. Here's some shit.
Oh, I got a handful of those movies. Don't you worry.
Awesome.
The last thing I saw was called Late Night. Mindy Kaling wrote that screenplay and stars in it. But it stars Emma Thompson, and she plays a late night talk show host. And it's common on how there aren't a lot of women doing that. But it's this like Devil Wears Prada-esque comedy, and she, Emma Thompson's not the easiest to deal with, and she finds out her show's not being canceled, but she's being replaced. So it's just kind of about the changing media landscape, but it's a comedy. Like it's totally something you've seen 100 times, but I wouldn't even say it's like a message movie. It's more like this is happening kind of movie. I didn't feel like beat over the head by any kind of message in this movie, but seen it a million times, but I thought it was pretty entertaining and funny, and it played well. It played really well.
The crowd liked it.
Yeah, that's going to sell big here.
Cool.
How about you, Brad?
So I started the day with The Mountain, which is a Rick Alverson film set in the mid-century in America. And they do a nice job doing mid-century design and homes and furniture and stuff. But it's a very grim, kind of weird, almost the upside-down kind of take on mid-century America. It stars Udo Kier. For not long enough, I like him in films, and he's not in this film long enough, as the father of this boy played by Ty Sheridan, who was in Ready Player One.
Right.
And he's amazing in this. He plays this kid who's kind of introverted and really can't make eye contact with people. And his father is a instructor for figure skating, and he drives the Zamboni around the rink, keeping the rink all nice and clean. And he, through a series of events, hooks up with this doctor played by Jeff Goldblum, who is a fading celebrity lobotomist, and winds up.
So wait,
That's a
when
thing.
you say that, is he lobotomizing celebrities?
No,
or he's famous for lobotomizing?
He was famous for doing it.
Okay,
because
because
It's been an interesting movie.
he just goes and shows up like, hey, Lindsay Lohan,
that's right.
I'm here for your
Zombieland in LA.
Yeah,
But no, he
Man Binds, you're next.
he'd been a proponent of the technique, for decades. And this is a time when it had fallen out of favor, hadn't been banned yet, but had fallen out of favor. And so he's basically a traveling salesman type lobotomist. And he goes from state hospital to state hospital, on demand. And he winds up taking the Ty Sheridan character named Andy with him to carry his gear and to take pictures of the patient/victim. And the other thing he does is he has a portable electroshock unit. So they do electroshock and then they do the lobotomy. And that calms the people right down. And so the sort of odd aspect of the film is it's slow. The music is very David Lynch. There's a whole sort of David Lynch cast over the whole film, and you definitely can tell Alverson is getting at some sort of we want you to take a look at, maybe you hadn't thought about the 50s and 60s in America as anything more than this kind of quaint, cool time, and there was some darkness there that maybe you should consider. And then right in the middle of all of it, there's the French actor Denis Lavant, who is the father of this girl she's kind of acts out and is troublesome, and he pays the doctor to lobotomize her. And he goes onto these drunken rants that are, just pure David Lynch. I would be surprised if they were even scripted. And it's just this crazy stuff about philosophy and art and the world and how Americans are so precious. And so that's The Mountain. That's a good one.
I'm really intrigued in that one.
Yeah. And then the second film I saw today was called Queen of Hearts, and I'm going to mispronounce the director's name. It's May.
That's okay. We do it all the time. We're totally professional like that.
El Duque. It's a Danish film starring Trine Dyrholm and Magnus Kepper. I'm probably saying both those wrong. I think I got Magnus right. And also a young man named Gustav Lindt. So in this one, we have a family drama set in both Sweden and Denmark, in which this man has to bring his troubled late teen son to live with them because he'd been causing too much trouble for his mother and she couldn't handle him. And his wife, who is a prosecutor and puts bad men away, and she specializes in abuse cases and battered women, is against having the boy in the home because she thinks he's going to be trouble and it's going to upset their life. And she eventually does agree to it. But when Gustav moves in, he's not happy to be there. His other choice was boarding school. And he winds up being trouble for them as well. But then something happens, and I don't want to spoil it, but something happens that she catches him at. And basically she has him in a blackmail situation where she makes him behave by blackmailing him into behaving. And so he actually does really well then, integrating into the family and getting along with her other children. And you seem like, you're an hour into the film and you're like, oh, okay, well, they solved all that. Then something else happens. She actually begins to become attracted to him. And then they wind up having sex, and hilarity does not ensue after that. And then the movie sort of follows a trajectory after that. It makes some twists and turns that you wouldn't expect. And by the end of the film, you're kind of stunned at where they went with it. And the director has obviously got a really forceful vision, and she's really powerful, ballsy, just going for it. And that's how the film plays at the end. I have to imagine the two women working together were like, yep, we're going there, we're doing this. And so it's a powerful, powerful movie. So I would recommend that one, Queen of Hearts. And then finally today, I saw a documentary called Shooting the Mafia. It's about a woman named Letizia, who was a young wife in Palermo, Sicily, who didn't really want to play the regular wife and mother role. She had children, she married young, but she always had a hunger to do something else. And so she wound up out of her marriage, having many affairs, and landed as a photographer with a Palermo newspaper. And she thought that her coverage would be, women and kids and like taking pictures at the picnic or whatever. It wound up being many, many photos of Mafia hits.
Oh, that's cheery.
Over decades.
Wow.
That sounds so interesting.
And she's just she's tough. This is a tough woman and fearless. And, and she talks about the times that she was pretty sure she was going to be killed, by them. And you follow her life, and she's very old now. I couldn't even hazard a guess in 70s, 80s anyway. But from the age of, 20 or 30, she took these photos and had lovers and had this amazing life, and always kind of restless and always kind of pushing to the next thing. But it's definitely a love letter to her and the things she accomplished and how the politics of Sicily changed over the years, partly because of her work, taking the photos and making sure everyone saw what happened. So I recommend that one as well. That was a great movie.
Very cool. So I started out my day seeing the Untitled Amazing Johnathan Doc. This is the movie I was waiting for. Like, since they announced the schedule, like that's the one I zoned in on. I was like, I want to see it. And I think we got tickets for the Salt Lake City screening because there was a little bit of snafu with the schedule. But I got sorted out with the publicist, got tickets, went in, and the Amazing Johnathan is kind of a dick in this.
Oh no!
I'm a big fan, and the thing about me is I've worked at a podcast network that dealt pretty heavily with comedians. And being around comedians, I know that the thing they hate the most is to act like comedians outside of the comedy club. Like, they don't like when you're like, hey, be funny, or, hey, right, tell that joke. So, you kind of notice like there's a darkness to them, and you kind of keep your distance. I mean, there's, exceptions to the rule. But I always thought that the Amazing Johnathan was one of those comedians, and even, with his magic, where you think it's going one way and it shifts. Like in the review that I have yet to write, but I'm going to work on it right after this podcast, I wrote that He's the kind of magician that doesn't just pull the bunny out of the hat. He pulls the bunny out of the hat and fucking murders it. That's the Amazing Johnathan in a nutshell. And I've been a big fan since I was a kid, like watching the Comedy Central specials. On my 21st birthday, I went with my buddy Tristan, who was born 3 days after me. So we had a Vegas trip. And I remember we wanted to see the Amazing Johnathan, but the tickets were way too expensive. Like we were, broke fucking kids. And we showed up to the Peppermill. And we were eating our food, and we saw the Amazing Johnathan, like sitting in a few booths, like away. And we always joke we had our own little mini magic show because he was entertaining like his friends, and he was doing shit with the salt shaker. And I always thought that was really cool. And I never got a chance to see him do his act in person because he had this heart condition, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce it because it's way beyond my vocabulary. But he was essentially given 1 year to live. And there was this, like I'd seen the clip before, but there was this clip in the documentary where he's like telling the audience, and the audience is laughing. And he's just like, it's not a joke.
Like, no, I'm not kidding.
I'm not kidding. And like it was just a really heartbreaking moment. The documentary crew interviews his wife, and like she's saying these sound bites about how every morning, like I just have this sick feeling in my gut that he's going to be dead. This is the morning that's going to happen. Well, he survived 4 years after his expiration date, and he went on the road to do a tour. And I was under the impression, and I even said it in the other podcast when I was talking about wanting to see this movie. I thought he was cured. I thought he was fine. No, he's still dying, but like it's kind of like that attitude where it's like I was given more time. I'm going to get up and perform. I'm going to make something of the time that I'm given.
Right.
So he went on one last tour, and I didn't know that was his last tour. Otherwise, I would have fucking went. So I'm kicking myself. But the interesting thing about this documentary is it's very raw and very honest and very brutal. But something happens. And again, like it's like the Amazing Johnathan's act. You're expecting it just to be a reflection of his career, his regrets and all that stuff. Something happens to where the documentarian, Ben Bersman, I believe his name is. I had it written down. So I'm going to, Benjamin Berman. I was close. Benjamin, he finds out that the Amazing Johnathan has hired a second documentary crew to make another movie. And this documentary crew is like, they're complete assholes. They're like, we don't want to be in your shots. We're going to, take over the building before you can and get footage. And it becomes like almost like Ben is now a character in his own documentary, like trying to deal with the Amazing Johnathan, trying to figure out, like what is an actual, like, what is the trick, like what is the illusion, stuff like that. He starts even questioning, like, is the Amazing Johnathan lying about, his death sentence? Like, does he really have this disease? And there's this really intense moment where like he, posits this to the Amazing Johnathan, and the Amazing Johnathan just looks at him with this like death stare and goes off on him. Like, you really think that I would be fucking sick and twisted enough to do this shit? I have to go to the hospital all the time, like, what do I gain from it? Like I wasn't working for like 3 years, like just go rails into him. I have a theory, and I hope it doesn't piss anybody off. I just, based on the information given to me, they said that he looked into like the legal ramifications of faking his death. I think he was given a death sentence, but it wasn't 1 year. So I think he's playing with everybody now that he's 3 years past. Yeah. I think that's what he did. I don't want to piss anybody off because it is a serious thing, and I honestly think that there's something wrong. But he also is very candid about his drug addiction. He's a meth smoker, like hardcore. But it's funny. It's interesting. It has a lot of twists and turns, and I absolutely adored this movie. I was a fan before, and I'm an even bigger fan now.
Wow.
So the second movie I saw was Where's My Roy Cohn? I'm not into political documentaries, but I will say this: the subject of this Roy Cohn, was very interesting. He was a very mean, manipulative, crooked man. It goes into his sexuality a lot, how he was basically, on the McCartney hearings, like, persecuting homosexuals, and he turned out to be one. Even to his last days, he was denying it. And they have interviews with his boyfriend.
Nice.
And it was interesting enough to keep my interest. And the funny thing is, the crowd roared with laughter. Roger Stone showed up in it, which was very, very timely. Very timely.
He's having a good day then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Totally. But it's not really my cup of tea, but it was well done. Mm-hmm. It was a well-made movie, a great documentary. Sucks you in and keeps you invested. And I was invested. I wasn't tuning out. The third movie was a film called Koko-Di Koko-Da. I can't even say the fucking thing. This movie really started out promising. It was this Swedish film that was very twisted and dark, and it was about this couple that experienced the worst tragedy imaginable, losing their daughter, and then they go on a camping trip, and these three weird figures show up. There's a guy wearing like one of those old timey hats, the flat bill. What are they called? Like the one that Dick Van Dyke was wearing in Mary Poppins, like one of those hats. Huh? No, it's not a bowler. Anyways, whatever the fuck they're called. He's wearing it, and he's like singing and super creepy. Like, I was like, this is going to be like the next horror icon. Like, this guy, it's seriously. And then there was this tall girl who had like Queen Amidala hair, and like was wearing like this like plain dress and just super creepy presence. And then there was this good old boy dude with like a unibrow and like overalls and just looked like, country. I guess there's country in Sweden. I don't know. And they were just creepy. And the thing that made the movie fall apart, though, is they replayed the same sequence with itty bitty little differences. Like, they did the whole like, oh, this character realizes that this might be a dream, so he's going to try something different, which is fine. It's a fine gimmick, but they went to the well. They went to the well way too many times with it, to where it was like, all right, we get it. Come on, like, fucking go to something else. And it's one, like, have you ever had like one of those things where you are watching a movie and you're like, I have no idea what the fuck any of this is about. I have no idea what's going on.
Sure.
Yes.
And then, like, as soon as the movie ends, like, your brain starts like putting the puzzle pieces together like rapidly. And I was just like, oh, I get it. It's still not that interesting. I get what they were saying, but the dude, like, I was saying in the Q&A, because I was like, I want to know what this guy, I want answers. Why did he do these things? And the Q&A, that dude was so pretentious. Like, they asked, like, is this based on like a Swedish, like, folktale? And, like, are these characters, based on something? And he's just like, I saw these characters. They're real. It's not a fairy tale to me. Yeah, I'm weird and pretentious and artsy fartsy. I was like, fuck off. So yeah, those were the three movies that I saw. Now, going around the table again, if you had to recommend one of the movies you saw, what would it be?
Honey Boy. I really liked Honey Boy.
Shooting the Mafia.
Shooting the Mafia. For me, obviously, The Amazing Johnathan. Yeah. Untitled Amazing Johnathan Doc. Like I said, way too many twists for a documentary, and it was awesome. It reminded me of The Amazing Jonathan's Magic Act. Just cool. You thought it was going somewhere, goes in a different direction. Anyways, we have reviews to write and sleep to catch up on. I have an early day. I'm sure you guys have to get started pretty early too. So we're going to end the shit out of this podcast.
All right. Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you guys. Oh, and one other thing. Let's get out of here.